Welcome to Echo Recap. Today I'll take you through a horror action film released in 2018 titled Flight 666. The story begins aboard an international flight en route to New York. Outside, a raging thunderstorm shakes the aircraft, lightning flashing across the windows. The atmosphere inside is tense but controlled. Two flight attendants, Alice and Liam, move down the aisles, doing their best to keep passengers calm. Among the travelers are Brandon and Donica, newlyweds still glowing from their honeymoon. They sit together, quietly scrolling through family photos on their phones, unaware of the horror that is about to unfold. In first class, a blonde woman named Anna glances nervously at the man sitting beside her. Her unease grows when she notices the handle of a gun at his waist, but the man calmly reveals his identity: Thaddeus, an air marshal assigned to this flight. Elsewhere in the cabin, a man named Devin grips his seat. He suffers from a severe fear of flying, and the turbulence is pushing him to the edge. As he stares out the window, lightning lights up the sky, and something strange catches his eye. At first, it seems like a trick of the storm, the outline of a woman floating outside the plane. But then the figure moves. It stretches an arm toward him. In the next flash of lightning, her face slams against the glass. Devin falls to the floor, screaming. His panic draws the attention of everyone around him. The flight crew tries to calm him, but he insists that he saw something, someone, on the outside of the plane. His claims are dismissed, blamed on stress and fear. Seeking to collect himself, Devin hurries to the restroom. He splashes water on his face and mutters to himself, trying to stay grounded. But under the flickering lights, a face appears in the mirror behind him. A woman watching him. Terrified, he bursts from the lavatory, crashing to the floor in the aisle once again. The passengers stare. Devin is restrained and sedated for safety. But the fear he experienced leaves a heavy silence in the cabin. Up in the cockpit, Captain Jack and First Officer Ryan review the instruments. The storm was supposed to pass 20 minutes ago, but it hasn't. Lightning continues to strike around them. The radar is unclear. Still, the captain remains calm. He has thousands of flight hours behind him and is determined to navigate through it. Back in the cabin, the crew begins meal service. A woman named Tani requests food and is given a salad. Moments after eating, she begins to clutch her stomach. Then she stands, pale and shaking, before vomiting into the aisle. The flight attendant rushes to her side, only to discover the vomit is crawling with maggots. Trying not to alarm the other passengers, the crew covers it with a blanket and inspects the remaining meals. More maggots are found inside the salads. All the food is discarded immediately. The cockpit is notified. The captain instructs them to remain calm and discreet. But before the message is finished, a flash of lightning strikes the plane. The power cuts out. The cabin goes dark. The aircraft begins to plummet. Panic ripples through the passengers. In the cockpit, the instruments fail. The engines shut down. The captain pulls at the controls while the first officer scrambles to reboot the systems. After tense seconds, the power returns. The engines restart. The plane stabilizes, but communication with air traffic control is lost, and the autopilot stops responding. As the turbulence dies down, the crew checks on the passengers. Anna is found with a bloody nose, likely from the sudden drop. She excuses herself to the restroom to recover. Meanwhile, Alice tries using her phone, only to realize it's completely non-functional. Out of the corner of her eye, she thinks she sees a face outside the window. Then comes a sound, soft, distant, but unmistakable. A baby crying. Inside the restroom, Anna hears the same sound. The lights flicker. Then all at once they go out. When they return, she sees her own reflection. But in the mirror, her throat is cut, blood pouring down her chest. She screams. Outside, Alice rushes to the door, but it's locked. Inside, Anna pounds against the walls. But where there was once a door, there is now only solid wall. Then, out of the darkness, a pair of hands pulls her backward, into another space entirely. Anna finds herself surrounded by crates and luggage, a warehouse-like space, unfamiliar and cold. A dark figure darts past her. Moments later, she is returned to the restroom, but she is not alone. A terrifying woman holding a baby appears, begging silently for help. Just then, the door bursts open. The air marshal forces his way in. Anna collapses into sobs. Anna is helped back to her seat, but fear is growing. Danica, the newlywed, begins to cry. Brandon tries to comfort her, but then something appears on their window. Letters drawn in condensation. The word is clear: murder. Danica puts on her headphones, trying to drown out her fear with music. But what she hears isn't only music, also a woman's voice, pleading for help. She hands the headphones to Brandon, but he hears nothing unusual. When Danica puts them back on, the volume suddenly spikes. Her ears begin to bleed. She opens the overhead bin to grab some medicine. But as she does, a horrific figure lunges out from the bin, throwing her to the ground. When she opens her eyes, she's in the same warehouse Anna saw. The baby cries echo again. A woman holding a child appears, begging for help, then waves her hand, and Danica is thrown back into the cabin, screaming in panic. The cabin is in chaos. Another passenger stands and accuses Danica of being a threat, just like Devin earlier. He demands her to be restrained, but Thaddeus calms everyone down and urges them to remain in their seats. Then something changes. Devin, still restrained, suddenly feels a chill. The hair on his arms rises. He turns toward the back of the plane. There in the aisle stands a horrifying woman, bald, bruised, one eye missing, her skin a patchwork of wounds. The lights go out suddenly. In the darkness, the woman's disfigured face moves closer. She says nothing, then raises a hand and points toward the cockpit. With a loud shriek, she vanishes into smoke. Alice immediately storms into the cockpit, demanding an emergency landing. But the captain explains, there's nowhere to land. They're still over the Pacific Ocean, no airstrip, no options. But then the smoke returns. It creeps through the open cockpit door and seeps into First Officer Ryan's body. His eyes glaze over. His face contorts. Then he lunges at the captain. Screaming about revenge, he tries to gouge out Jack's eyes. The cockpit shakes. The plane banks sharply. Passengers scream as oxygen masks drop. Thaddeus bursts in, pulls Ryan away, and subdues him. Ryan loses consciousness. The plane is momentarily stable again. Thaddeus gathers a few passengers and let them begin connecting the pieces. Danica and Anna both describe being taken into the same place, a room full of cargo which is a warehouse. The only part of the plane that matches that description is the luggage hold. They open the hatch to the cargo area. Immediately, they hear the soft, eerie sound of a baby crying. Blood stains the floor, and lying beside it is the baby. For a moment, it's real. Then it vanishes. A long, pulsing umbilical cord appears on the floor, stretching through the hold and connecting to a large black suitcase. They unzip it and find something unthinkable. Dozens of photos, each showing different women, bound and mutilated. Some of the faces match the spirits that appeared on the plane. The bag contains hair, fingernails, jewelry, souvenirs from the dead, and inside they find a business card. It belongs to Captain Jack. Thaddeus races back to the cockpit, points his gun at Jack, and demands answers. But Jack refuses to admit anything and insists the bag isn't his. But the evidence is overwhelming. Jack loses control and throws the plane into a dive. In the cabin, passengers scream as turbulence tears through the aircraft. The smoke returns thicker, faster. It races between passengers, possessing them one by one. Each person it touches begins to scream about vengeance. Thaddeus restrains the captain, who is now fully unraveling. Ryan regains consciousness just in time to stabilize the plane. Another flash of lightning and a loud bang. The plane lurches violently. In the struggle, the captain breaks free and grabs the marshal's gun. He smiles, believing he's in control again. But then, he hears the baby crying. A woman in heels holding a child walks toward him slowly. Her face is familiar, one of the women in the photographs. Behind her, more women appear. Spirits, victims. They surround him, their eyes full of sorrow and rage. Jack begins to beg for his life. The spirits force his hand upward. His finger tightens on the trigger. A gunshot echoes through the plane. It turned out that Captain Jack was a serial killer with a dark obsession. He had a pattern, targeting vulnerable, solitary women. He would brutally murder them, photograph his crimes, and stash the evidence. Then, hiding behind his uniform and the freedom of constant travel, he moved from city to city, making it nearly impossible for anyone to trace the killings back to him. The captain's soul leaves his body. In death, he sees them all. The women he murdered. They have waited a long time for this moment. Back in the cockpit, Ryan is struggling to control the damaged plane. The clouds begin to break. A signal reaches the radar. Air traffic control responds. Against all odds, Ryan guides the plane toward the nearest runway. Everyone on board survives. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to subscribe to Echo Recap for more movie breakdowns every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.